Before the city woke up, before the elevators filled with tailored suits and expensive cologne, Lena Mercer already belonged to the silence. For 3 years, she'd perfected invisibility inside Blackthorn Holdings, pretending to be deaf while cleaning offices where men discussed crimes they believed no one could hear. Then one afternoon, a pen dropped. She flinched, and Roman Viscari saw it. The most dangerous man in the building now knew her secret. Everything she'd overheard, the laundering, the betrayals, the murders, suddenly made her the only witness who could destroy an empire. Follow this story to the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The metal pen hit the marble floor at 4:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, and Lena Mercer's entire life shattered with it. She'd been wiping down the conference table on the 42nd floor when it happened. The sound cracked through the silence like a gunshot, sharp, sudden, unavoidable. Her shoulders jerked. Her head turned maybe 2 inches to the left before she caught herself. 2 inches. That was all it took. When she looked up, Roman Viscari was standing in the doorway, his expression unreadable, his dark eyes fixed on her with the kind of focus that made her skin go cold. He didn't say anything, didn't move, just watched her with the patience of a predator who'd just confirmed his prey was exactly what he suspected. Lena's heart hammered against her ribs, but she forced her face back into the blank mask she'd worn for 3 years. She returned to wiping the table, moving the cloth in slow, methodical circles, pretending she hadn't heard anything, pretending she was still the deaf cleaning woman everyone believed her to be. But Roman didn't walk away. He stepped into the room instead, his footsteps deliberate against the polished floor, and closed the door behind him with a soft click that felt louder than any slam. Lena kept cleaning. "Interesting," Roman said quietly. She didn't react. "A pen falls. You turn toward the sound." His voice was calm, almost conversational. "But you're deaf, aren't you?" Lena's hands trembled slightly against the table. She pressed harder with the cloth to hide it. Roman moved closer. She could feel him behind her now, maybe 5 feet away, watching every movement she made. "I've seen you work this building for years," he continued. "Never once have you responded to your name. Never turned when someone called you. Never flinched at loud noises." He paused. "Until today." Lena's throat tightened. She kept her eyes down, focusing on a non-existent smudge on the table's surface. "So either you've suddenly developed hearing," Roman said, "or you've been lying to everyone in this building since the day you started working here." The silence stretched between them like a wire pulled taut. Lena wanted to run, wanted to drop the cloth and bolt for the door and disappear into the city where no one would ever find her. But running would confirm everything. Running would get her killed. So she stayed frozen, barely breathing, praying he'd lose interest. Roman stepped closer. "Look at me." She didn't move. "I said, look at me." Still nothing. Then his hand was on her shoulder. Not rough, not violent, just firm enough to make it impossible to ignore. He turned her around slowly until she had no choice but to meet his eyes. Up close, Roman Viscari looked exactly like the rumors said he did. Sharp jawline, dark hair cut precisely, expensive suit that fit like it had been built around him. But it was his eyes that made her stomach drop, cold, calculating, and completely certain. "You can hear me," he said. Not a question, a statement. Lena's pulse thundered in her ears. She opened her mouth, closed it again, her mind scrambling for any excuse that might save her. Roman's expression didn't change. "How long?" he asked. She stared at him, her voice caught somewhere between her chest and her throat. "How long have you been listening to everything said in this building?" The words finally broke free, barely a whisper. "I don't know what you're talking about." Roman's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "There it is." Lena's knees felt weak. "You just spoke," Roman said, "which means you can hear, which means every conversation that's happened in your presence for the last 3 years." He tilted his head slightly. "You heard all of it." She couldn't breathe. "I'm going to ask you one more time," Roman said quietly. "How long?" Lena's mind raced. She could lie. She could deny everything. But the way he was looking at her told her it wouldn't matter. Roman Viscari wasn't the kind of man who asked questions he didn't already know the answers to. "Since I started," she whispered. 3 years. She nodded. Roman studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he stepped back, adjusting his cufflinks with the same precision he seemed to apply to everything else. "Do you know what happens to people who spy on my organization?" he asked. Lena's chest tightened. "I wasn't spying. I was just pretending to be deaf so no one would notice you were listening to classified conversations." Roman's voice stayed level. "That's the definition of espionage." "I needed the job," Lena said, her voice breaking. "I needed somewhere safe, somewhere people wouldn't—" She stopped herself. Roman's eyes narrowed slightly. "Wouldn't what?" Lena pressed her lips together, refusing to say more. "You're afraid of men," Roman said, reading her like she was written in a language only he understood. "That's why you chose silence. That's why you made yourself invisible." She didn't answer, but she didn't need to. The truth was written all over her face. Roman watched her for another moment, then walked to the window overlooking the city. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the floor, turning the conference room into a study of light and darkness. "What have you heard?" he asked. Lena hesitated. "Everything," she said finally. "Be specific." She swallowed hard. "The offshore accounts, the shipments coming through the ports under false manifests, the meetings with the city officials, the—" She stopped, her voice failing her. Roman turned around. "Go on." "The man you trust," Lena said quietly. "Victor. He's planning something." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. "Explain." Lena's hands twisted together. "I've heard him on the phone. Late at night, when he thinks everyone's gone. He talks about moving assets, about timing, about making sure you're—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "Making sure I'm what?" Roman's voice was deadly calm. "Out of the way." The silence that followed felt like falling. Roman didn't move, didn't react. But something in his expression shifted, something cold and calculating that made Lena understand why people feared him. "How long has this been happening?" he asked. 6 months, maybe longer." "And you're certain it's Victor?" Lena nodded. "He uses your name. He talks about your schedule, about when you'll be alone." She met Roman's eyes. He's waiting for the right moment. Roman walked back toward her slowly. "Why are you telling me this?" The question caught her off guard. "What?" "You've spent 3 years invisible, safe, no one bothering you, no one even knowing you exist." Roman stopped in front of her. "Why risk that now?" Lena's throat tightened. "Because you already know," she said, "and if I don't tell you everything, you'll assume I'm working with him." "Smart," Roman said, "but that's not the only reason." She looked away. "You want protection," he continued. "You know what happens when people find out you've been listening. You know they'll come for you." His voice dropped. "So you're offering me information in exchange for safety." Lena's silence was answer enough. Roman considered this for a moment, then pulled out his phone and made a call. "Clear my schedule for the next 2 hours," he said to whoever answered. "No interruptions." He hung up without waiting for a response. Then he looked at Lena. "Sit." She didn't move. That wasn't a request. Lena slowly sank into one of the conference chairs, her entire body rigid. Roman sat across from her, his posture relaxed, but his attention absolute. "You're going to tell me everything," he said. "Every conversation, every name, every detail, and you're not going to leave anything out." He leaned forward slightly. "Because if I find out later that you lied to me even once, what Victor's planning for me will look merciful compared to what I'll do to you." Lena believed him, so she talked. For the next 90 minutes, she spilled 3 years' worth of secrets. She told him about the laundering schemes she'd overheard in the executive bathrooms, the quiet threats exchanged in hallways, the alliances forming and breaking behind closed doors, the shipments that came through the company's legitimate ports carrying things that had nothing to do with legitimate business. She told him about Victor's phone calls, about the careful way he'd been moving money into accounts Roman didn't know about the meetings he held after hours with men whose names Lena didn't recognize but whose intentions were clear. And she told him about the conversation she'd overheard just last week. Victor talking about a timeline, about making a move soon, about consolidating power before Roman realized what was happening. Roman listened to all of it without interrupting, his expression never changing, his eyes never leaving her face. When she finally finished, her voice hoarse, and her hands shaking. Roman leaned back in his chair. "You have a good memory," he said. "I had to," Lena replied. "If I forgot something important, it could get me killed. And now you've told me everything that could get you killed." Roman's eyes were steady on hers. "Which means your survival depends entirely on whether I decide you're useful or a liability." Lena's breath caught. "I'm not a threat to you," she said quickly. "No," Roman agreed. "You're not. But you're a witness to things that could destroy this organization if they ever became public." He tilted his head. "That makes you dangerous whether you intend to be or not." "I won't say anything to anyone else. I swear." "I know you won't," Roman interrupted, "because from this moment forward, you don't exist outside of my control." Lena's stomach dropped. "What does that mean?" Roman stood up. "It means you're no longer a cleaner. It means you don't go home tonight. It means no one sees you, speaks to you, or knows where you are unless I approve it." He straightened his cuffs. "It means you belong to me now." The words hit her like a physical blow. "I didn't ask for this," Lena whispered. "You chose it the moment you started listening," Roman said, "and you confirmed it the moment you told me about Victor." He walked toward the door. "Someone will come get you in 10 minutes. Don't leave this room." "Where are we going?" Roman paused with his hand on the door handle. "Somewhere you'll be safe," he said, "until I decide what to do with you." Then he was gone, leaving Lena alone in the conference room with nothing but the city lights below and the suffocating certainty that her life as she knew it had just ended. She didn't have to wait 10 minutes. 5 minutes later, the door opened and a man stepped inside. He was shorter than Roman, broader through the shoulders, with the kind of face that had seen violence and handed plenty of it back. "Let's go," he said. Lena stood on unsteady legs. "Where?" "Boss says you come with me. That's all you need to know." He didn't touch her, but he walked close enough that she understood running wasn't an option. They took the elevator down to the parking garage, not the main one, but a private level Lena had never seen before. A black car waited with the engine already running. The man opened the back door. "Get in." Lena hesitated. "I'm not going to ask twice." She climbed into the car. The man shut the door behind her and got into the driver's seat. The locks clicked automatically. They drove in silence through the city as evening turned to night. Lena watched the familiar streets blur past. The coffee shop where she bought her morning tea. The park where she sometimes ate lunch. The bus stop where she waited every evening to go home to her tiny apartment. All of it disappearing behind her. After 20 minutes, they pulled into an underground garage beneath a building Lena didn't recognize. The driver led her to a private elevator that required a key card to operate. They rode up in silence. The elevator opened into a hallway that looked more like a luxury hotel than an office building. Soft lighting, dark wood paneling, art on the walls that probably cost more than Lena made in a year. The driver stopped in front of a door and unlocked it. Inside, Lena stepped into what looked like a studio apartment. Small, but expensive. A bed, a bathroom, a kitchenette, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. "Stay here," the driver said. "Don't leave. Don't make calls. Don't do anything stupid." "How long?" "Until the boss says otherwise." He left without another word. The lock clicked behind him. Lena stood in the center of the room, her mind racing. She walked to the window and looked out at the city below. Thousands of lights stretching toward the horizon, millions of people living normal lives, while she stood trapped 40 stories above them. She tried the door, locked from the outside. She checked her pockets for her phone. Gone. Someone must have taken it while she wasn't paying attention. She was completely alone, completely isolated, completely at Roman Viscari's mercy. Lena sank onto the edge of the bed, her hands shaking. For 3 years, she'd survived by being invisible, by never speaking, by never existing loudly enough to matter. But Roman had seen her, and now she understood what happened to people who got noticed by men like him. They disappeared. She just never imagined she'd still be breathing when it happened. Lena didn't sleep that night. She sat by the window watching the city, her mind replaying every conversation she'd overheard, every secret she'd spilled to Roman, every moment that had led her to this room. She thought about her apartment. The landlord would probably throw out her things when she didn't come back. She thought about the few friends she had, They'd assume she'd finally left the city like she'd always talked about. She thought about the life she'd been living, small and quiet and safe, and realized it had never actually been any of those things. It had just been waiting. Waiting for the moment when silence stopped protecting her. Waiting for someone to look close enough to see through the lie. Waiting for Roman Viscari to drop a pen and watch her flinch. Around 3 in the morning, she finally dozed off in the chair by the window. She woke to sunlight streaming through the glass and the sound of the door unlocking. Roman walked in carrying a bag from a bakery she recognized from downtown. He set it on the small table without a word, then sat in the chair across from her. "Eat," he said. Lena stared at him. "I'm not hungry." "I don't care. Eat anyway." She pulled a croissant from the bag with trembling fingers and took a small bite. It tasted like nothing. Roman watched her in silence for a moment. "Victor's been moving money faster than I thought," he said finally. "He's planning to make his move soon, probably within the next 2 weeks." Lena swallowed hard. "What are you going to do?" "That depends on you." She looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" Roman leaned back in his chair. "I need you to keep listening, keep cleaning, keep being invisible." His eyes were steady on hers. "But now you're listening for me." Lena's stomach turned. "You want me to spy on him." "I want you to do what you've already been doing," Roman corrected. "The only difference is now you'll tell me what you hear." "And if I say no?" Roman's expression didn't change. "Then you become a liability I can't afford to keep breathing." The words were delivered without malice, without emotion, just cold, simple fact. Lena set down the croissant, her appetite completely gone. "Why me?" she asked. "You could use anyone, someone trained, someone who knows what they're doing." "Because Victor knows who my people are," Roman said. "He knows who to watch for, who to avoid." He leaned forward slightly. "But he doesn't know about you. No one does. You're the one person in that building who can get close without raising suspicion." "I'm not a spy." "No," Roman agreed. "You're a survivor, which is exactly what I need." Lena looked away, her mind racing through options she didn't actually have. "What happens after?" she asked quietly. "After you deal with Victor. What happens to me?" Roman considered this for a moment. "That depends on how useful you prove to be." It wasn't an answer. It was a threat wrapped in possibility. Lena met his eyes. "And if I do this, if I help you, will you protect me? From Victor?" "Yes." Roman's voice was certain. "From anyone else who might come for you because of what you know?" "Also yes." He paused. "But understand something. Once you work for me, you don't stop working for me. There's no going back to your quiet little life, no pretending this never happened." "There's no going back anyway," Lena said, her voice hollow. "You made sure of that when you brought me here." Roman didn't deny it. They sat in silence for a long moment, the morning sun casting long shadows across the room. Finally, Lena spoke. "What do you need me to do?" Roman's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes suggested he'd been certain of her answer all along. "Go back to work tomorrow," he said. "Act exactly like you always have. Clean, stay quiet, be invisible." He stood up. "But pay attention to Victor's schedule, who he meets with, when he's alone, what rooms he uses for private calls. And then what?" "And then you tell me everything." Roman walked toward the door, then paused. "One more thing," he said without turning around. "If Victor suspects anything, if he even looks at you wrong, you call this number immediately." He set a phone on the table. "Don't hesitate. Don't try to handle it yourself. Just call." "Why do you care if something happens to me?" Lena asked. Roman looked back at her. "Because right now you're the only advantage I have," he said simply. "And I don't waste advantages." Then he was gone, leaving Lena alone with the phone and the terrifying knowledge that she'd just agreed to walk back into the building where a man was planning a murder, and now she was the one person standing between Roman Viscari and a knife in the dark. She picked up the phone. It had only one number saved in it. No name, just a contact labeled, "Call if you want to live." Lena's hand shook as she set it back down. She'd spent 3 years surviving by staying silent. Now her survival depended on speaking, and she wasn't sure which terrified her more. Lena returned to Blackthorn Holdings the next morning, wearing the same gray uniform that had made her invisible for 3 years. But everything felt different now. The weight of the phone in her pocket, Roman's phone, pressed against her hip like a brand. Every step through the marble lobby echoed too loud. Every glance from passing employees felt like accusation. She pushed her cleaning cart toward the service elevator, keeping her eyes down, her expression blank. But her heart hammered against her ribs so hard she was certain everyone could hear it. The elevator doors opened. She stepped inside, and Victor D'Angelo stepped in behind her. Lena's breath caught in her throat. She stared straight ahead at the scratched metal doors, forcing herself not to react, not to move, not to acknowledge his presence in any way. Victor pressed the button for the 42nd floor, the executive level. The same floor Lena was heading to. The doors closed. They rode up in silence. Lena could feel him standing behind her, close enough that she could smell his cologne. Expensive, overwhelming, the kind of scent that announced its presence before the man wearing it ever spoke. She gripped the handle of her cleaning cart tighter, her knuckles going white. 38th floor. 39th. 40th. Victor shifted his weight. Lena heard the rustle of his suit jacket, the quiet exhale of breath. "You've been working here a long time," he said. Lena didn't move, didn't respond, stayed frozen in the performance she'd perfected over 3 years. "Strange how people become invisible," Victor continued, his voice casual, conversational. "How we stop seeing them as human after a while, just part of the furniture." 41st floor. "Makes you wonder what else we stopped noticing." The elevator dinged. 42nd floor. The doors opened. Lena pushed her cart forward without looking back. She heard Victor's footsteps behind her, steady, unhurried, heading in the opposite direction down the hallway. She didn't breathe properly until she heard his office door close. Her hands were shaking so badly she had to grip the cart to keep them still. She stood in the middle of the empty corridor, her pulse racing, every instinct screaming at her to run. But she didn't. Because Roman was right about one thing. She was a survivor. And survivors didn't run when running would get them killed. She cleaned methodically for the next 2 hours, moving from office to office with the same routine she'd followed for years. Empty trash cans, wipe down surfaces, vacuum floors, exist without existing. But now she was listening differently. Every conversation that drifted through half-open doors, every phone call conducted in hushed tones, every moment of silence that felt heavier than it should. Around 11, Victor's office door opened. Lena was cleaning this corridor outside, her back to him, her movements automatic. She heard him on his phone, his voice low and controlled. "Thursday night," he said. "After the meeting with the zoning commission. He'll be alone." Pause. "I don't care about the logistics. That's your job. I'm paying you to make problems disappear, not give me excuses." Another pause, longer this time. "No," Victor said sharply. "No changes to the timeline. We move on Thursday or we don't move at all." Lena's cloth moved in slow circles across the window she was cleaning. Her reflection stared back at her, blank-faced, empty, nothing. But her mind was racing. Thursday, 3 days from now. Victor ended the call and walked past her without a glance, heading toward the elevators. Lena waited until she heard the doors close before she let herself breathe. Then she pulled out the phone Roman had given her. She stared at the single saved number. Her thumb hovered over the call button. But something stopped her. Victor had been talking about logistics, about making problems disappear, about Thursday night after a meeting with the zoning commission. Roman needed more than that. He needed details, names, locations, proof. Lena put the phone back in her pocket and kept cleaning. That evening, she stayed late. The building emptied slowly after 6, executives first, then mid-level managers, then the administrative staff who actually kept everything running. By 7:30, the 42nd floor was almost deserted. Almost. Victor's office light was still on. Lena cleaned the corridor outside, moving slowly, deliberately, waiting. Around 8:15, she heard him on another call. "The account's ready?" Victor's voice carried through the partially open door. "Good. As soon as it's done, transfer everything to the Cayman account, all of it." Silence. "I don't give a damn about the audit trail. By the time anyone notices, I'll own the company and Vescari will be—" He stopped himself. "Just make sure the money moves clean." Lena's hand stilled on her cleaning cart. She needed to see who he was talking to, needed a name, something concrete. She moved closer to Victor's door, angling herself so she could see through the gap without being obvious. Victor sat behind his desk, phone pressed to his ear, his free hand running through his hair in frustration. "Listen to me very carefully," he said, his voice dropping to something dangerous. "I've spent 2 years setting this up, 2 years building the alliances, moving the pieces into place, earning his trust." He laughed, a cold, bitter sound. "Do you know how exhausting it is to pretend to respect a man you're planning to destroy?" Lena's breath caught. "Thursday night," Victor continued. "10th floor. Service entrance. Make it look like an accident. I don't care how. Elevator malfunction, fall, whatever. Just make sure there's nothing that traces back to me." Her heart stopped. "And after?" Victor asked. "After I walk into the board meeting Friday morning with the votes I need and the proof that Vescari's been skimming from company accounts for years, they'll be so busy trying to contain the scandal, no one will question how convenient the timing is." He was going to frame Roman, kill him, and destroy his reputation in one move. Lena backed away from the door slowly, her mind reeling. She made it to the service hallway before her legs gave out. She sank against the wall, her hands shaking so badly she could barely pull out the phone. This time she didn't hesitate. She called. Roman answered on the second ring. "Talk." "Thursday night," Lena whispered. "10th floor. Service entrance. They're going to kill you and make it look like an accident." Silence on the other end. "Who else knows?" Roman asked. "I don't know. He was on the phone. I couldn't see. Are you safe right now?" Lena glanced down the empty hallway. "I think so." "Where are you?" "Still in the building. Service hallway, 42nd floor." "Stay there. I'm sending someone." "No, wait. If someone comes for me now, Victor might notice." "Victor," Roman interrupted, his voice sharp, "won't be noticing anything much longer." The line went dead. Lena pressed her forehead against her knees, trying to slow her breathing. Her whole body felt like it was vibrating, adrenaline, fear, something else she couldn't name. Footsteps echoed down the hallway. She looked up sharply. Victor stood at the end of the corridor, backlit by the office lights, his expression unreadable. "You're here late," he said. Lena's throat closed. She pushed herself to her feet slowly, reaching for her cleaning cart like it was a shield. Victor walked toward her. "I don't think I've ever seen you work past 7, he continued, his tone conversational. 3 years, and you've always left right on schedule." Lena kept her expression blank, kept her eyes unfocused, kept breathing even though her lungs felt like they were full of concrete. Victor stopped a few feet away. "Funny thing about patterns," he said. Once they break, you start to wonder why." He tilted his head slightly. "So why are you still here?" Lena didn't respond. Couldn't respond without breaking the illusion she'd maintained for 3 years. Victor studied her face. "You know what I think?" he said quietly. "I think you're not as deaf as you pretend to be." Lena's heart slammed against her ribs. "I think you've been listening this whole time," Victor continued. "I think you hear everything, understand everything." He stepped closer. "And I think Roman Vescari figured that out." Lena forced herself to stay still, to keep her face empty, to give him nothing. But Victor smiled, cold and certain. "You flinched," he said, "when I said his name. Just a little, but enough." He reached out and grabbed her wrist before she could pull away. "Let's have a conversation," Victor said. "A real one." He dragged her toward his office. Lena's mind went blank with panic. She tried to pull back, but Victor's grip was iron. She opened her mouth to scream. The elevator dinged. Victor's head snapped toward the sound. The doors opened and Roman stepped out, flanked by 2 men Lena didn't recognize. His eyes went directly to Victor's hand wrapped around Lena's wrist. The temperature in the hallway dropped 20 degrees. "Let her go," Roman said quietly. Victor's expression flickered. Surprise, then calculation, then something close to amusement. "Or what?" he asked. "You'll kill me in your own building? In front of witnesses?" "Yes," Roman said simply. The word hung in the air like a promise. Victor's grip loosened slightly. Then he smiled, sharp and vicious. "You really think she's worth protecting?" He jerked his head toward Lena. "She's been spying on both of us, playing both sides. You can't trust her any more than you can trust me." I don't trust her, Roman said, but I own her, which means no one touches her without my permission. Victor laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. You're already dead, he said. You just don't know it yet. Thursday night, Roman replied. 10th floor, service entrance, elevator malfunction. He took a step forward. Did I miss anything? Victor's face went white. She told you. Every word. Victor's hand dropped from Lena's wrist. He stepped back, his mind clearly racing through options that were disappearing faster than he could calculate them. This doesn't have to end badly, Victor said, his tone shifting to something almost reasonable. We can still work this out, split the territory, you keep the legitimate operations, I take the… Get on your knees, Roman interrupted. Victor blinked. What? You heard me. The two men flanking Roman moved closer, their hands resting casually near their waistbands where Lena knew guns were holstered. Victor's jaw clenched. You're making a mistake. The only mistake I made, Roman said, was trusting you in the first place. Now get on your knees or I'll have them put you there. For a long moment, Victor didn't move. His eyes darted between Roman and the two men, measuring odds he clearly didn't like. Then slowly, he lowered himself to his knees. Roman walked past him without a glance and stopped in front of Lena. Up close, she could see the cold fury burning behind his controlled expression. Are you hurt? He asked. Lena shook her head, not trusting her voice. Roman looked at one of his men. Take her downstairs. Keep her safe. No, Lena said, the word breaking free before she could stop it. Roman's eyes snapped back to her. No? If I leave now… Lena's voice shook. If people see me leaving with your men while Victor's still up here, they'll know I was involved. They'll know I told you. They're going to know anyway. Not if I stay, Lena said. Not if I finish my shift like nothing happened. Not if I'm still just the deaf cleaning woman who didn't hear anything. Roman studied her for a long moment. You want to stay invisible. I want to stay alive, Lena corrected. Behind them, Victor laughed again, quieter this time, almost bitter. She's smarter than both of us, he said. Roman ignored him. If you stay, he said to Lena, you see things you can't unsee. You become complicit. There's no going back to pretending after tonight. There's already no going back, Lena said. Something shifted in Roman's expression, not quite respect, but close. All right, he said finally. Stay. Finish your shift. Act like nothing happened. He leaned closer, his voice dropping. But understand something. What happens next isn't clean, it's not simple, and it's definitely not something you forget. Lena met his eyes. I stopped forgetting things 3 years ago. Roman held her gaze for another moment, then nodded. Go, he said. Clean the West Wing. Don't come back to this hallway. Lena grabbed her cart and walked away on legs that felt like water. She didn't look back, didn't let herself think about what was happening behind her. But she heard Victor's voice, bitter and resigned. You're going to regret this. And Roman's response, cold as winter. The only thing I regret is not seeing you for what you were sooner. Lena turned the corner and kept walking. She cleaned the West Wing like her life depended on maintaining normalcy. Emptied trash, wiped surfaces, vacuumed floors. Her hands moved automatically while her mind screamed. Around 9:30, she heard footsteps. One of Roman's men appeared at the end of the hallway, the same one who'd driven her to the safe house the night before. Boss says you can go home, he said. What happened? Lena asked quietly. Nothing you need to worry about. Is he… She stopped herself. Victor D'Angelo no longer works for this organization, the man said flatly. That's all you need to know. Lena's hands tightened on her cart. Did you… Go home, the man interrupted. Get some sleep. Tomorrow you come back and you work like nothing changed. You understand? Lena nodded slowly. She rode the elevator down alone, pushed through the lobby with her cart, and stepped out into the cold night air. The city moved around her, cars, pedestrians, life continuing like the world hadn't just tilted sideways. She walked 3 blocks before her legs gave out. She sank onto a bus stop bench, her whole body shaking. She pressed her hands against her face, trying to slow her breathing, trying to process what had just happened. Victor was gone. Dead, probably. Because of what she'd told Roman, Because she'd chosen a side, because 3 years of invisibility had ended the moment a pen hit the floor and she'd been stupid enough to flinch. Lena pulled out the phone Roman had given her, stared at the blank screen. She could run, right now, disappear into the city, change her name, start over somewhere else. But Victor's words echoed in her head. You can't trust her any more than you can trust me. Roman knew that. Knew she was a liability. Knew she'd heard too much, seen too much, become too much of a risk. The only reason she was still breathing was because he'd decided she was more useful alive than dead. For now. Lena stood up slowly and started walking. Not toward her apartment, not toward anywhere specific. Just walking because stopping meant thinking and thinking meant drowning. She walked for hours. Past midnight, past the last trains. Past the point where the streets emptied and the city belonged only to people with nowhere else to go. She ended up in front of Blackthorn Holdings. The building rose above her like a monument to everything she'd become entangled in. Lights still burned on the upper floors. Roman's office, probably. The man who never seemed to sleep, who controlled an empire with the same precision he used to destroy his enemies. The man who owned her now, whether she wanted to admit it or not. Lena's phone buzzed. She looked down at the screen. Unknown number. She answered. Where are you? Roman's voice. Outside the building. Silence on the other end, then, come up. It's almost 2 a.m. I know what time it is. Come up anyway. The line went dead. Lena stared at the phone for a long moment. Every instinct told her to walk away, to disappear before she got any deeper into something she didn't understand and couldn't control. But she was already too deep. So she walked into the building, took the elevator to the 42nd floor, and found Roman's office door open. He sat behind his desk, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, a glass of something amber beside his laptop. He didn't look up when she entered. Close the door, he said. Lena did. Sit. She sat in one of the chairs facing his desk, her hands folded in her lap to hide the trembling. Roman finally looked at her. In the low light of his office, he looked tired, not physically, but the kind of tired that came from carrying weight no one else could see. Victor's been eliminated, he said simply, along with 3 others who were part of his operation. The board will be told he embezzled funds and disappeared. No one will question it. Lena's throat tightened. Did you? No, Roman interrupted. I don't get my hands dirty unless I have to. I have people for that. He leaned back in his chair. But I gave the order, which makes me just as responsible. The admission hung between them. Why are you telling me this? Lena asked. Because you need to understand what you're part of now, Roman said. You think you were just passing along information, playing it safe, staying neutral. He shook his head. But the moment you called me tonight, you chose a side, and people died because of that choice. Lena's hands clenched tighter. He was going to kill you. Yes, Roman agreed. But that doesn't change what you did. It doesn't erase the blood. I'm not sorry, Lena said, the words surprising her even as she spoke them. Roman's eyes narrowed slightly. No, he was a murderer, a traitor. He would have killed you and framed you and destroyed everything you built. Lena's voice steadied. So no, I'm not sorry he's dead. Roman studied her for a long moment. You're stronger than I thought, he said finally. I'm a survivor, Lena corrected. There's a difference. Not much of one. They sat in silence. Outside the windows, the city glittered like broken glass. What happens now? Lena asked. Now you go back to cleaning, Roman said. Back to being invisible, back to listening. For you. Yes. Lena looked away. And if I say no, if I tell you I want out? Roman's expression didn't change. Then you become the same liability Victor was, he said quietly, and I handle you the same way I handled him. The words weren't a threat, they were just fact. Lena met his eyes again. So I never had a choice. You had a choice, Roman said. You made it when you called me tonight instead of running. You made it when you stayed in that hallway instead of leaving when I told you to. You made it when you said you weren't sorry. He leaned forward. You've been making choices all along. You just don't want to admit what kind of person those choices make you. The words cut deeper than any threat could have. Because he was right. Lena had spent 3 years telling herself she was just surviving, just staying quiet. just trying to make it through each day without being noticed. But she'd been listening to confessions of crimes, memorizing details of illegal operations, cataloging sins without ever reporting them. She'd been complicit long before Roman forced her to choose a side. She'd just been too afraid to admit it. "What kind of person does it make me?" Lena asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Roman's expression softened slightly, not kindness exactly, but something close to understanding. "The kind who survives," he said, "no matter what it costs." Lena stood up slowly. "I should go." "One more thing," Roman said. She stopped. Victor wasn't working alone. There are others. People inside this organization who helped him, supported him, funded him. Roman's eyes were steady on hers. "I need you to find them." Lena's stomach dropped. "I'm not an investigator." "No," Roman agreed, "but you're invisible, which makes you more valuable than any investigator I could hire." He stood up, walking around his desk until he was standing directly in front of her. "You're going to keep cleaning, keep listening, keep being the woman no one notices, and you're going to tell me everything you hear, every name, every conversation, every detail." "And if I find them?" Lena asked. "What happens then?" Roman's expression went cold. "Then they end up like Victor." Lena's breath caught. I can't be responsible for more deaths." "You already are," Roman said flatly. "Victor's blood is on your hands just as much as it's on mine. The only question now is whether you're strong enough to accept that and keep going, or whether you're going to break." Lena felt something inside her crack. Not break, just crack, like ice under pressure. She looked at Roman, really looked at him, and saw the truth she'd been avoiding since the moment that pen hit the floor. She wasn't a victim anymore. She was a weapon, Roman's weapon. And the terrifying part was how little that bothered her. "I'll do it," she heard herself say. Roman nodded slowly. "Good." He walked back to his desk, already shifting his attention to something else. A file, a phone call, another problem that needed solving with the same cold efficiency he applied to everything. Lena turned toward the door. "Lena." She stopped, surprised he'd used her name. "You did the right thing tonight," Roman said without looking up. "I know it doesn't feel like it, but you did." The words should have been comforting. Instead, they felt like the final door closing on the life she used to have. Lena walked out of his office, took the elevator down 42 floors, and stepped out into the pre-dawn darkness. The city was still sleeping, but she knew she'd never sleep the same way again. Because Roman was right about one thing. She'd made her choice, and there was no going back from it now. Over the next 2 weeks, Lena became someone she didn't recognize. She showed up for work every morning at 5:30, pushed her cleaning cart through the marble lobby, smiled vacantly at security guards who waved her through without a second glance. But now she was hunting. Every conversation she overheard got cataloged. Every name mentioned got memorized. Every suspicious meeting got reported back to Roman through the phone he'd given her. She learned to recognize patterns, to spot the small tells that indicated someone was lying, to understand the difference between normal business discussion and something darker hiding beneath polite language. And slowly, piece by piece, she started identifying the others who'd helped Victor. Marcus Chen from accounting, who'd been moving money through shell companies. Jennifer Reyes from legal, who'd been bearing evidence of the offshore accounts. David Park from operations, who'd been coordinating the shipments that had nothing to do with legitimate business. 3 more names, 3 more people who'd betrayed Roman. Lena reported each one, and one by one, they disappeared. Not as dramatically as Victor. No confrontations in hallways, no scenes. They just stopped showing up for work. Their offices got cleaned out quietly. Their desk nameplates got removed. Their emails got forwarded to someone else. And no one asked questions. Because in Roman Vescari's organization, asking questions about missing people was a quick way to become the next person who disappeared. Lena told herself she was just doing what she had to do to survive. But late at night, alone in her apartment, she knew that was a lie. She was doing this because some part of her, some dark, buried part she'd never wanted to acknowledge, liked having power, liked being necessary, liked being seen. After 3 years of being invisible, Roman Vescari had given her the one thing she'd never thought she wanted, the ability to destroy people with a whisper. And it terrified her how easily she'd learned to use it. The 14th day after Victor's death, Roman called her to his office again. It was late, almost 11 at night. The building was empty except for security and the night cleaning crew. Lena rode the elevator up, her heart steady now. Not calm, exactly, but no longer panicked. She'd gotten used to these late-night meetings, used to the weight of Roman's attention, used to the careful dance they performed around the truth neither of them wanted to speak out loud. She was his employee. He was her boss, but they both knew it was more complicated than that. The elevator doors opened. Lena stepped into the dimly lit hallway and walked to Roman's office. The door was ajar. She pushed it open. Roman stood at the windows overlooking the city, his back to her, a glass of whiskey in his hand. "Close the door," he said without turning around. Lena did. They stood in silence for a long moment. "The board met this afternoon," Roman said finally. "Made some decisions about the company's future direction, restructuring, new leadership in several departments." Lena waited. "They also asked questions about the recent turnover." Roman took a sip of his drink. 4 executives gone in 2 weeks. People notice that kind of thing. "What did you tell them?" Lena asked. "That we'd uncovered embezzlement, that the individuals involved had been terminated and criminal charges were being prepared." He turned to face her. "They believed me. Because the evidence was airtight. Because every detail checked out. Because you gave me everything I needed to make it look legitimate." Lena's hands tightened at her sides. "You're saying this is my fault." "I'm saying you're good at this," Roman corrected. "Better than I expected. Better than most people I've hired specifically for this kind of work." The compliment felt like poison. "I'm just cleaning and listening," Lena said, "like you told me to." "No," Roman said. "You're doing more than that. You're analyzing, connecting dots, understanding context." He set his glass down on the desk. "You're thinking like an operative." "I'm not." "Yes, you are." Roman crossed his arms. "And that creates a problem." Lena's pulse quickened. "What kind of problem?" "The kind where you become too valuable to let go," Roman said quietly, "but also too dangerous to trust completely." The words hung in the air between them. "I've done everything you asked," Lena said, her voice tight. "I've given you every name, every detail, everything." "I know." "Then what more do you want from me?" Roman studied her for a long moment. "The truth," he said finally, "about why you really stayed." Lena blinked. "What?" "You could have run," Roman said. "After Victor, after the others. You could have disappeared into the city, and I would never have found you. I'm good, but I'm not that good." He stepped closer. "So why didn't you?" Lena's throat tightened. "Because you would have killed me." "Probably," Roman agreed. "But that's not the real reason." "Then what is?" Roman's eyes were steady on hers. "You stayed because for the first time in your life you felt powerful." The accusation hit like a physical blow. "That's not—" "Yes, it is," Roman interrupted. "You spent 3 years invisible, ignored, erased, and then suddenly you mattered. Suddenly your words had weight. Suddenly people lived or died based on what you told me." He tilted his head slightly. "That's not survival, Lena. That's ambition." Lena wanted to deny it, wanted to scream that he was wrong, but the words wouldn't come. Because deep down, in the place she'd been hiding from herself, she knew he was right. She'd liked it. Liked being necessary. Liked being powerful. Liked being seen by the one man in the building who'd never looked past her. The realization made her sick. "I'm not like you," she whispered. "No," Roman agreed. "You're worse." The words hit harder than any insult could have. "What's that supposed to mean?" Roman stepped closer until they were barely a foot apart. "It means I know what I am," he said quietly. "I know I'm a criminal, a killer, a man who destroys people to protect what's mine. I don't pretend to be anything else." His eyes never left hers. "But you? You still think you're the victim in this story. You still tell yourself you're just surviving, just doing what you have to do to stay alive." "I am—" "You're lying to yourself," Roman said. "And that's more dangerous than anything I've ever done." Lena felt something break inside her, not the crack from before, but a real fracture, deep and irreparable. "What do you want me to say?" she asked, her voice breaking. "That I liked it? That I liked having the power to destroy people who never even knew I existed?" She laughed, a hollow, bitter sound. Fine. I liked it. Is that what you wanted to hear? No, Roman said. I wanted you to hear it. The silence between them felt like falling. Lena pressed her hands against her face, her breathing ragged. I don't know who I am anymore, she whispered. Yes, you do, Roman said. You just don't want to admit it. She looked up at him, tears burning in her eyes. And who am I? Roman's expression softened slightly. Not kindness, but something close to recognition. Someone like me, he said quietly. Someone who survives no matter what it costs. No matter who gets destroyed in the process. Lena wanted to argue, wanted to prove him wrong, but she couldn't. Because standing there in Roman Vescari's office at 11:30 at night, covered in secrets and blood she'd helped spill, Lena finally understood the truth she'd been running from since the moment that pen hit the floor. She wasn't a victim. She was a survivor. And survivors did terrible things to stay alive. What happens now? She asked, her voice raw. Roman held her gaze. Now you decide, he said. Either you accept what you are and you work for me completely, no more pretending, no more hiding behind the deaf-cleaning woman persona, or you walk away tonight and you never come back. And if I walk away? Roman's expression didn't change. Then you disappear, he said. And we both know I'm not talking about you choosing to leave. I'm talking about me making sure you can't talk about what you've seen, what you've done, what you know. The threat was delivered without malice, just cold, simple fact. So it's not really a choice, Lena said. Everything's a choice, Roman corrected. You just don't like the options. Lena closed her eyes. 3 years ago, she'd walked into this building looking for safety, for invisibility, for a place where no one would notice her long enough to hurt her. And now she stood in the office of the most dangerous man she'd ever met, being offered the one thing she'd never thought she'd want: power. Real power. The kind that came with blood and consequences and no way back. She opened her eyes. I'll stay, she said. Roman nodded slowly, like he'd known her answer before she did. Then starting tomorrow, you're no longer a cleaner, he said. You're my employee. Officially. You'll have an office, a title, access to information most people in this organization will never see. What title? Lena asked. Roman's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Whatever you want, he said. You've earned it. Lena should have felt victorious, should have felt powerful, should have felt like she'd finally won something after years of losing. Instead, she just felt numb, like she'd traded one cage for another, but at least this cage came with a key. Even if the key was covered in blood. I should go, Lena said quietly. She turned toward the door. Lena! She stopped. You made the right choice, Roman said. Lena looked back at him, this man who'd seen through every wall she'd built, who'd forced her to see herself clearly for the first time in her life, who'd given her power and taken her soul in the same breath. Did I? She asked. Roman's expression was unreadable. Time will tell. Lena walked out of his office for what she knew would be the last time as the invisible cleaning woman. Tomorrow, she'd come back as someone else entirely. Someone with a name, a face, a voice. Someone who mattered, and she still couldn't decide if that was salvation or damnation. The elevator doors closed, carrying her down through 42 floors of secrets she'd helped protect and people she'd helped destroy. When she stepped out into the cold night air, Lena Mercer looked up at the towering building above her and realized the truth. She'd spent 3 years being invisible because she was afraid of being seen. But now she understood that being seen was the most dangerous thing of all. Because once people saw you, really saw you, they could never unsee you, and Roman Vescari would never unsee her now. For better or worse, she belonged to him, and to the empire they'd built on whispers and blood. Lena's first day as someone who mattered started with a nameplate. It sat on the desk in her new office, 3rd floor, West Wing, far enough from the executive level to be unremarkable but close enough to the operations center to have access. The brass gleamed under fluorescent lights, her name etched in clean serif font. Lena Mercer, operations analyst. She stared at it for a full minute, her hands pressed flat against the desk surface, feeling the weight of legitimacy settle over her like a coat that didn't quite fit. No more gray uniform, no more cleaning cart, no more pretending, Just her name, her face, her voice, everything she'd spent 3 years hiding. The phone on her desk rang. She picked it up. "Viscari wants you upstairs," a voice said. "Now." The line went dead. Lena took the elevator to 42, her reflection staring back at her from the polished doors. She wore clothes she'd bought yesterday. Simple black slacks, a white blouse. Nothing expensive, but nothing that screamed invisible either. Her hair was pulled back, her face was clean. She looked like every other mid-level employee in the building. Except she wasn't. The elevator opened. Roman's assistant, a woman named Claire with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue, gestured toward the conference room. "He's waiting." Lena walked in and stopped cold. Roman sat at the head of the table, but he wasn't alone. 4 other men occupied chairs around the polished surface, all of them older, all of them watching her with expressions that ranged from curiosity to outright hostility. "Close the door," Roman said. Lena did. "Gentlemen," Roman continued, his voice calm and controlled, "this is Lena Mercer. She's the reason Victor D'Angelo and his associates are no longer stealing from this company." One of the men, silver-haired, expensive suit, the kind of face that had signed million-dollar contracts without flinching, leaned back in his chair. "This is your source?" he asked, his tone dripping skepticism. "A cleaning woman?" "Former cleaning woman," Roman corrected. "Now she's operations analysis. And yes, Robert, she's the source that saved this company from collapsing under embezzlement and internal sabotage." Robert's eyes narrowed. "And we're supposed to trust her? Just like that?" "You're supposed to trust my judgment," Roman said flatly. "Which means if I say she's reliable, she's reliable." Another man spoke up, younger, harder, with the look of someone who'd climbed his way up through violence rather than boardrooms. "What exactly did she hear?" he asked. Roman gestured to Lena. "Tell them." Lena's throat went dry. She'd reported everything to Roman in private, in the safety of his office where only he could judge her. But standing here in front of 4 men who controlled pieces of an empire she barely understood, "Victor D'Angelo was planning to kill Mr. Viscari and frame him for embezzlement," she said, forcing her voice steady. "He'd been moving money through offshore accounts for 2 years. He had support from Marcus Chen in accounting, Jennifer Reyes in legal, and David Park in operations. They were going to execute the plan 2 weeks ago. Thursday night, 10th floor service entrance." The room went silent. Robert's expression shifted from skepticism to something colder. "And how exactly did you know all this?" he asked. "Because I was invisible," Lena said. "People talked around me like I didn't exist, like I couldn't hear, like I didn't matter." "But you could hear." "Yes." "So you lied," Robert said. "For 3 years you pretended to be deaf and spied on everyone in this building." Lena's hands clenched at her sides. "I survived," she corrected. "There's a difference." "Not from where I'm sitting," Roman's voice cut through the tension like a blade. "That's enough, Robert." "Is it?" Robert turned to face Roman. "You bring a woman who's been lying to everyone for years into our inner circle and expect us to just accept it. How do we know she's not still playing both sides? How do we know she won't sell our secrets to the next highest bidder?" "Because she's smart enough to know that betraying me would be suicide," Roman said quietly. "And because I've given her something none of you seem to understand the value of." "What's that?" "A reason to stay loyal." The words hung in the air like a challenge. Robert stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. "This is a mistake, he said. "And when it blows up in your face, don't expect the rest of us to clean up the mess." He walked out without another word. The remaining 3 men exchanged glances. One by one, they stood and filed out, leaving Lena alone with Roman. She exhaled slowly, her entire body trembling. "That went well," she said, her voice tight with barely controlled panic. Roman leaned back in his chair. "Robert's always been dramatic," he said. "He'll get over it." "Will he?" Roman's eyes met hers. "Probably not," he admitted, "but it doesn't matter. You're part of this organization now. They'll have to accept it." Lena sank into one of the empty chairs. "What if they don't? Then they'll deal with the consequences of opposing me." Roman's voice was flat, final. "Just like Victor did." The casual way he said it made Lena's stomach turn. "You can't just kill everyone who disagrees with you." "I can," Roman said. "I just choose not to unless they become a problem." He stood up. Come on, I need to show you something. Roman led her to a room at the end of the 42nd floor hallway, one Lena had cleaned 100 times but never entered. He unlocked the door with a key card and gestured for her to go inside. The room was small, windowless, and dominated by a wall of monitors showing security feeds from every floor of the building. Dozens of cameras, hundreds of angles, every corridor, every elevator, every entrance and exit. Lena stared at the screens, her mind racing. "You've been watching," she said slowly. "Always," Roman confirmed. "But there are blind spots, places the cameras don't cover, conversations that happen behind closed doors." He looked at her. "That's where you came in. You filled the gaps." Lena walked closer to the monitors, studying the feeds. She could see her old cleaning route, the service elevators, the empty corridors, the offices she used to wipe down while people discussed things they thought no one heard. "How long have you known?" she asked quietly. "That you weren't deaf?" Roman said. "About 6 months." Lena's head snapped toward him. "What?" "You're good," Roman said. "Better than most, but you made small mistakes. A blink when someone shouted. A half-second delay before you moved when I called your name from behind. Nothing obvious. Nothing anyone else would catch." His expression was unreadable. "But I notice things other people miss." Lena's pulse hammered in her ears. "So when the pen dropped, I was testing you," Roman finished, confirming what I already suspected. The realization hit her like cold water. Everything after that, bringing me here, making me work for you, all of it, you planned it. "Not all of it," Roman said. "Victor's betrayal was real. Your information was valuable. But yes, I've been positioning you since the moment I confirmed you could hear." Lena felt the ground shift beneath her feet. "Why?" Roman gestured to the monitors. "Because I needed someone invisible," he said. "Someone people wouldn't suspect. Someone who could move through this building without raising questions." He met her eyes. "And you were perfect." "So I was never in control," Lena said, her voice hollow. "I thought I was choosing to help you, but you were manipulating me the entire time." "I gave you options," Roman corrected. "You chose which ones to take." "That's not the same thing." "Isn't it?" Lena wanted to scream, wanted to throw something, wanted to run. But she couldn't, because Roman was right. She'd made every choice that led her here, every decision, every word spoken, every secret shared. She thought she was gaining power, but she'd just been trading one cage for another. "What do you want from me now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Roman pulled a folder from the desk and handed it to her. "There's a new problem," he said. "Someone's been leaking information to a federal task force investigating organized crime. Nothing concrete yet, nothing that traces back to us. But it's only a matter of time." Lena opened the folder. Inside were photos, documents, transcripts of recorded phone calls. "I need you to find out who it is," Roman said. Lena's hand stilled on the papers. "You want me to find another traitor?" "Yes." "And when I do?" She looked up at him. "What happens then?" Roman's expression was cold. "The same thing that happened to Victor." Lena closed the folder slowly. "I can't keep doing this," she said. "I can't keep being responsible for people dying." "Yes, you can," Roman said, "because the alternative is you dying instead." The words were delivered without heat, without anger, just simple, terrible truth. Lena stood there holding the folder, feeling the weight of it pressing against her chest like a stone. "I want out," she whispered. "No, you don't." "Yes, I do." Roman stepped closer. "If you wanted out, you would have run months ago," he said quietly. "You would have disappeared the night Victor died. You would have said no when I offered you a position." He tilted his head. "But you didn't, because some part of you, the part you don't want to admit exists, likes this." "That's not true." "You like being necessary," Roman continued. "You like having power. You like being seen by people who used to look right through you." His eyes were steady on hers. "You like being mine." The last word hit her like a slap. Lena opened her mouth to deny it, but the words wouldn't come, because he was right, and she hated him for it. "Take the folder," Roman said. "Do the work. Find the leak." He walked toward the door. "And stop lying to yourself about what you are." He left her alone in the room full of monitors, surrounded by 1,000 watching eyes, holding evidence of another betrayal she'd be forced to expose. Lena looked down at the folder in her hands. Then she opened it and started reading Trotten. The leak's name was Sarah Mitchell. It took Lena 3 days to figure it out. 3 days of listening to conversations, tracking movements, analyzing patterns. 3 days of being the invisible woman again, except now she had an office and a title and the full weight of Roman Vescari's organization behind her. Sarah worked in compliance, ironic given what she was doing. She'd been feeding information to a federal prosecutor for 6 months. Nothing major yet, just enough to build a case slowly, carefully, without tipping anyone off. But Lena found the pattern. Late-night emails sent from Sarah's personal account to an encrypted server. Phone calls made from burner phones purchased with cash. Meetings in coffee shops across town with a man Lena's research identified as Assistant U.S. Attorney Marcus Webb. Sarah was building a case that could bring down the entire organization, and Lena was the only person who knew. She sat in her office late on the third night, staring at the evidence spread across her desk. Photos of Sarah meeting with Webb, transcripts of encrypted communications she'd managed to access through Roman security systems, bank records showing small payments, probably to cover Sarah's risk. Everything Roman would need to eliminate the threat. Everything that would get Sarah Mitchell killed. Lena's hands shook as she gathered the papers into a neat stack. She could do this. She'd done it before. Victor, Marcus, Jennifer, David, all of them gone because of information she provided. What was one more? But something stopped her. Maybe it was the photo on top of the stack, Sarah leaving work, coffee in hand, smiling at something on her phone. She looked normal, human, not like a traitor or a threat or a problem to be eliminated, just a woman trying to do what she thought was right. Lena pulled out the phone Roman had given her, stared at the single contact. Her thumb hovered over the call button, but instead of pressing it, she opened her computer and started typing. An hour later, she walked into Roman's office without knocking. He looked up from his desk, surprised. "I didn't call for you," he said. "I know." Lena set a flash drive on his desk. "I found your leak." Roman picked up the drive, his expression unreadable. "Who?" "Sarah Mitchell, Compliance Department. She's been feeding information to a federal prosecutor for 6 months. Roman's jaw tightened. "You're certain?" "Yes." He stood up, already reaching for his phone. "Wait," Lena said. Roman paused. "What?" Lena's heart pounded against her ribs. "Let me talk to her first." Roman's eyes narrowed. "Why?" "Because maybe she has a reason," Lena said. "Maybe if we understand why she's doing this, we can fix it without—" She stopped herself. "Without killing her," Roman finished. His voice was cold. "That's what you were going to say." "Yes." Roman set down his phone. "You're getting soft," he said. "No," Lena said. "I'm trying to be smart. If Sarah disappears right now, the feds will know something's wrong. They'll dig deeper, move faster. But if we flip her, if we convince her to feed them false information, we buy time." Roman studied her for a long moment. "That's not why you want to talk to her," he said quietly. Lena's hands clenched. "What?" "You see yourself in her," Roman said. "Another woman trying to survive in a world that wants to destroy her. Another person making desperate choices." He stepped closer. "You think if you save her, it somehow redeems what you've done to the others." "That's not—" "Yes, it is." Roman's voice was steady, certain. "But here's what you're forgetting. Sarah Mitchell isn't you. She's not trying to survive. She's trying to destroy us. And that makes her the enemy." "She's still human. So were the others," Roman said flatly. "Victor, Marcus, Jennifer, David, all of them human. All of them dead because you told me what they were doing." He picked up the flash drive. "Don't pretend this one is different just because she has a pretty smile in her photo." Lena felt something crack inside her. "I can't keep doing this," she whispered. "You already said that," Roman replied, "and you're still here." "Because you won't let me leave." "Because you don't actually want to leave," Roman corrected. "If you did, you'd already be gone. I'm not keeping you prisoner, Lena. I'm just showing you who you really are." The words hit like bullets. Lena turned away, her vision blurring. "I'll handle Sarah," Roman said behind her. "You don't have to be involved." "It doesn't matter," Lena said, her voice breaking. Involved or not, she's dead because of me. She's dead because she betrayed this organization, Roman said. You just connected the dots. Lena walked to the door. Where are you going? Roman asked. I don't know, Lena said honestly. Somewhere I can pretend to be someone else for a while. That didn't work out so well last time. Lena looked back at him. No, she agreed. It didn't. She left his office and took the elevator down to the ground floor. The city was dark outside, rain beginning to fall against the windows. She walked out into it without an umbrella, letting the cold water soak through her clothes. She walked for blocks without direction, her mind replaying everything that had led her here. 3 years of silence, 2 weeks of violence, 3 days of hunting someone who reminded her too much of herself. She ended up at a bar she'd never been to before. Dark, quiet, the kind of place where people came to forget things they didn't want to remember. Lena ordered whiskey and sat in the corner booth staring at nothing. The news played on a TV above the bar. Something about a federal investigation into corporate corruption. Something about arrests coming soon. Lena's phone buzzed. She pulled it out. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her press accept. Hello? Lena Mercer? The voice was unfamiliar. Male. Professional. Who is this? My name is Marcus Webb. I'm an assistant U.S. attorney. A pause. I believe we have a mutual friend, Sarah Mitchell. Lena's blood went cold. I don't know anyone named Sarah. Yes, you do, Webb interrupted. And I know what you've been doing for Roman Viscari. The question is whether you want to keep doing it or whether you want to help me stop him. Lena's hands shook around the phone. How did you get this number? Sarah gave it to me, Webb said, before your boss had her killed 3 hours ago. The world tilted sideways. What? She's dead, Webb said flatly. Murdered. Made to look like a suicide. But we both know what really happened. His voice hardened. And we both know you're the one who gave Viscari her name. Lena couldn't breathe. I tried to. It doesn't matter what you tried to do, Webb said. It matters what you did. And what you did was sign her death warrant. Lena pressed her hand against her mouth, bile rising in her throat. But here's the thing, Webb continued. I don't care about you. I care about Viscari, and you're the only person who's been inside his organization long enough to give me what I need. He paused. So I'm offering you a deal. You testify against him. You walk away from this with immunity. You refuse, and you go down with him when I bring this whole organization to the ground. Lena's mind raced. I can't testify against him. He'll kill me. He's going to kill you anyway, Webb said. You're a witness to too many crimes, a liability that knows too much. The only question is whether you die as his victim or his enemy. That's not a choice. It's the only choice you have left, Webb interrupted. Think about it. You have 48 hours to decide. After that, the offer expires and you're on your own. The line went dead. Lena sat in the booth, rain streaming down the windows outside, the weight of everything pressing down on her until she couldn't tell where her body ended and the darkness began. Sarah was dead. Because of her. And now she had 2 days to decide whether to betray the man who'd given her power or die protecting him. She looked down at her hands, the same hands that had cleaned offices for 3 years, that had held secrets and spilled blood, that had signed death warrants with whispered words. And she realized the terrible truth Roman had been trying to show her all along. There was no redemption for people like her. Only choices between different kinds of damnation. Lena stood up and walked out of the bar into the rain. She didn't go back to her apartment. She didn't go back to Blackthorn Holdings. She just walked through the city like a ghost, invisible again, disappearing into the same silence that had protected her for 3 years. Except this time, she knew the silence wouldn't save her. Nothing would, because she'd finally become exactly what she'd spent her whole life afraid of becoming. Dangerous. Complicit. Damned. And there was no going back from that. Not anymore. Bestimmt. 47 hours later, Lena stood outside the federal building downtown, rain still falling. The phone Marcus Webb had called her from clutched in her trembling hand. She'd spent 2 days thinking, 2 days weighing options that all ended in death. 2 days realizing that Roman had been right about everything except one thing. She did want out, and this was the only way left to get it. Lena walked through the glass doors into the marble lobby. A security guard stopped her. Can I help you? I need to speak to Marcus Webb, Lena said, her voice steady despite the hurricane screaming inside her chest. "Tell him Lena Mercer is here. Tell him I'm ready to talk." The guard made a call. 5 minutes later, Marcus Webb stepped off an elevator, mid-40s, gray at the temples, the kind of face that had seen too many crimes and convicted too few criminals. He looked at her for a long moment. "You're sure about this?" he asked. Lena thought about Sarah Mitchell, about Victor D'Angelo, about Marcus Chen and Jennifer Reyes and David Park, about every person who died because she'd whispered their names to Roman Vescari. "No," she said honestly, "but I'm doing it anyway." Webb nodded slowly. "Then let's talk." He led her upstairs to a conference room where 2 other people waited, a woman with a recorder and a man with a notepad. Lena sat down. Webb sat across from her. "Before we begin," he said, "I need you to understand what you're agreeing to. The moment you start talking, you become a federal witness, which means Vescari can't touch you without facing consequences that'll destroy him." "He'll find a way," Lena said. "Let him try," Webb replied. "We'll be ready." Lena looked at the recorder, at the woman's hand poised over the button, at the man with his pen ready to write down every word that would destroy the empire she'd helped protect. And she thought about 3 years of silence, about the woman she'd been before Roman Vescari saw through her lies, about the woman she'd become after. Webb leaned forward. "Are you ready?" Lena closed her eyes, took a breath, and made the only choice she had left. "Yes," she whispered. The recorder clicked on, and Lena Mercer started talking. Lena talked for 6 hours straight. She told them everything, every conversation she'd overheard in 3 years of invisible cleaning, every name, every crime, every whispered confession spoken by men who believed she couldn't hear. She described the offshore accounts Victor had used, the shipments that moved through legitimate ports carrying illegal cargo, the meetings where executives discussed bribes and threats like they were discussing lunch orders. She told them about the murders, about people who disappeared, about bodies that never got found, and families that never got answers. And she told them about Roman Vescari, about how he controlled everything with quiet precision, how he never raised his voice or lost his temper but somehow made grown men terrified with nothing but a look, how he'd seen through her deception in seconds and turned her into a weapon against his own organization. The woman with the recorder had to change the tape 3 times. The man with the notepad filled 17 pages. Marcus Webb sat across from her the entire time, his expression never changing, his eyes never leaving her face. When she finally finished, her throat was raw, and her hands were shaking so badly she had to press them flat against the table to keep them still. Webb leaned back in his chair. "That's good," he said quietly. "That's very good." "What happens now?" Lena asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Now we move fast," Webb said. "We've got enough for warrants, enough to freeze accounts, seize assets, bring charges against everyone you named." He glanced at his colleagues. "We can have people in custody by tomorrow morning." "Roman won't let that happen," Lena said. "The moment he finds out, I'm talking to you." "He already knows." The words hit Lena like a punch to the stomach. "What?" Webb pulled out his phone and showed her a text message time-stamped 20 minutes ago. "Tell Lena I'm disappointed. I thought she was smarter than this." The number was Roman's. Lena's vision blurred. "How?" "Someone in my office is on his payroll," Webb said flatly. "Has been for years. I've suspected it, but never had proof. Until tonight." He put his phone away. "The moment you walked into this building, someone made a call, which means Vescari knows exactly where you are and what you're doing." Lena stood up so fast her chair fell backward. "Then I need to leave, now, before he—" "Before he what?" Webb asked calmly. "Kills you in a federal building surrounded by armed agents? He's not that stupid." "You don't know him like I do." "No," Webb agreed, "but I know men like him, and they don't make moves unless they're certain of the outcome." He gestured for her to sit. "You're safe here. For now." Lena didn't sit. She paced to the window overlooking the city, her heart hammering against her ribs. Somewhere out there, Roman knew she'd betrayed him, knew she'd given the feds everything they needed to destroy his organization, and he was planning his response. "I need protection," Lena said, her voice tight with barely controlled panic. "Witness protection, a new name, a new city, whatever it takes." "That's already being arranged," Webb said, "but it'll take a few days to process. Until then, you'll stay in a safe house with armed security. A few days? Lena turned to face him. Roman can do a lot of damage in a few days. Let him try, Webb said. Every move he makes now just gives us more evidence. Lena wanted to scream that he didn't understand, that Roman Vescari wasn't some common criminal who made mistakes when he was angry. He was the kind of man who destroyed people surgically, methodically, without ever getting blood on his own hands. But she was too exhausted to argue. A female agent appeared in the doorway. Safe house is ready, she said. Webb stood up. Agent Morrison will take you there, he said to Lena. Stay inside, don't contact anyone, don't make calls, don't do anything that could tip off Vescari to your location. Lena nodded numbly. Morrison led her through a back exit to an unmarked car. They drove through the rain-soaked city in silence, Morrison's eyes constantly checking mirrors, her hand never far from the gun holstered at her hip. The safe house was a nondescript apartment in a building that looked like 1,000 others scattered across the city. 3rd floor, 2 bedrooms, bars on the windows. There's food in the fridge, Morrison said. Don't answer the door for anyone. Don't open the windows. And this, she handed Lena a phone. Emergency line. You call it, backup's here in 3 minutes. What if 3 minutes isn't fast enough? Lena asked. Morrison's expression didn't change. Then make sure you stay alive until we arrive. She left without another word. Lena stood in the center of the apartment, listening to the locks click into place from the outside. She walked to the window and looked down at the street below. A car sat parked across from the building, unmarked, but Lena could see the outline of someone in the driver's seat. Federal protection. It should have made her feel safe. Instead, it just made her feel trapped. She sank onto the couch and stared at the blank TV screen, seeing her own reflection staring back. Hollow-eyed, exhausted, barely recognizable as the woman who'd walked into Blackthorn Holdings 3 years ago looking for invisibility. Her phone buzzed. Not the emergency phone Morrison had given her, the other one. The one Roman had given her months ago. Lena stared at it, her heart stopping. One new message. She opened it with shaking hands. We need to talk. Alone. Just you and me. One last conversation before this ends. Below the text was an address. Lena recognized it immediately. The building where Roman had kept her that first night. The room with the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. She typed back with trembling fingers. The feds are watching me. I can't leave. The response came immediately. Yes, you can. There's a service exit behind the building. No cameras, no agents, just you choosing whether to run or face what you've done. Lena's breath came in short, shallow gasps. Why would I meet you? So you can kill me? If I wanted you dead, you'd already be dead. I want to talk, nothing more. You owe me that much. Lena stared at the message for a long time. She did owe him. She'd worked for him, learned from him, become someone different because of him. And then she destroyed everything he'd built with 6 hours of testimony. But meeting him alone was suicide. She looked at the emergency phone Morrison had given her, looked at the locks on the door, looked at the agent sitting in the car below. All of it designed to keep her safe. All of it designed to keep her trapped. Lena made a decision. She walked to the bathroom window, the only one without bars. It was small, barely large enough for her to squeeze through, but it opened onto a fire escape that led down to the alley behind the building. She climbed through. The cold air hit her like a slap. Rain soaked through her clothes immediately. She descended the fire escape slowly, carefully, her hands slipping on wet metal. When she reached the ground, she looked back up at the apartment. The lights were still on. From the street, it would look like she was still inside. She had maybe an hour before anyone noticed she was gone. Lena pulled up her hood and walked into the rain. The building was exactly as she remembered it. Lena took the private elevator to the 40th floor, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. The hallway was empty, silent, just her footsteps echoing against marble floors. She stopped in front of the door she remembered. It was unlocked. She pushed it open. Roman stood at the window with his back to her, exactly like the first time she'd been brought here. The city spread out below them. Millions of lights, millions of lives, millions of people who had no idea what was happening 40 stories above them. Close the door, Roman said without turning around. Lena did. They stood in silence for a long moment. You ran from federal protection to meet me, Roman said finally. That was stupid. Probably, Lena agreed. They'll realize you're gone soon. They'll come looking for you. I know. Roman turned to face her. He looked exactly the same as always, controlled, precise, dangerous. But something in his eyes was different, something colder. Why did you come? He asked. Lena's hands clenched at her sides. You said I owed you a conversation. And you believed me? No, Lena said honestly. But I came anyway. Roman studied her for a long moment. You're either very brave or very stupid, he said. I haven't decided which. Does it matter? Not really. Roman walked to the small table and poured 2 glasses of whiskey. He held one out to her. Drink. Lena hesitated. It's not poisoned, Roman said. If I wanted you dead, I wouldn't waste good whiskey. Lena took the glass. Her hand shook slightly, making the liquid tremble. Roman raised his glass. To betrayal, he said quietly. The only constant in this business. He drank. Lena didn't. Roman noticed. You don't trust me, he observed. Should I? No, Roman admitted. But you came here anyway, which means some part of you still believes I won't hurt you. You killed Sarah Mitchell, Lena said, her voice tight. 3 hours after I gave you her name. Yes. No denial, no justification, just acknowledgement. She was trying to do the right thing, Lena continued. She was trying to stop criminals from destroying lives, and you murdered her for it. She was trying to destroy my organization, Roman corrected. There's a difference. Not to her family. No, Roman agreed, but her family isn't my problem. My problem was her, and now she's not a problem anymore. The casual way he said it made Lena's stomach turn. How do you live with yourself? She asked. Roman took another sip of whiskey. The same way you do, he said, by accepting that survival requires ugly choices. I'm not like you. Yes, you are. Roman set his glass down. You just don't want to admit it. You think because you're testifying against me, it somehow makes you different, better. But we both know the truth. What truth? You didn't betray me because Sarah Mitchell died, Roman said quietly. You betrayed me because you finally saw an exit and you took it. You didn't care about justice or redemption or doing the right thing. You cared about saving yourself. That's not... Yes, it is, Roman interrupted. And there's nothing wrong with that. Survival is survival. But don't pretend you're anything other than what you are. Don't pretend you're a hero when you're just another person trying not to drown. Lena's vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall. I hate you, she whispered. I know, Roman said, but you also understand me, which is why you're here instead of hiding in that safe house. He was right, and Lena hated him for that too. What do you want from me? She asked, her voice breaking. Roman walked closer until they were only a few feet apart. I want you to understand what's going to happen next, he said. The feds will use your testimony to build their case. They'll freeze accounts, seize assets, arrest people. It'll feel like they're winning. He paused. But they're not. They have everything they need to destroy you. They have evidence of crimes committed by people who work for me, Roman corrected. But evidence and proof are different things. And by the time this goes to trial, half the witnesses you named will recant. The other half will disappear. Documents will get lost. Recordings will be corrupted. His eyes were steady on hers. I've been doing this for 15 years. You think I don't have contingencies? Lena's throat tightened. You're going to get away with it. Most of it, Roman confirmed. Some people will go to prison. Some accounts will be lost. Some operations will shut down. But I'll survive. I always do. And me? Lena asked. What happens to me? Roman's expression didn't change. That depends. On what? On whether you're willing to undo what you've done. The words hung in the air like a noose. Lena stepped back. You want me to recant my testimony. I want you to tell the truth, Roman said, that you were coerced, that the feds threatened you, that everything you said was fabricated under duress. He tilted his head. It's not even a lie. Webb did threaten you. He told you it was testify or go to prison. Because I'm guilty, Lena said. I helped you. I gave you names. I'm complicit in everything you did. Exactly, Roman said. Which means if I go down, you go down with me. The only difference is I have lawyers who can protect me. You don't. Lena's hands clenched into fists. You're saying I don't have a choice. You always have a choice, Roman said. You just don't like the options. It was the same thing he'd told her before. The same trap closing around her again. And if I refuse? Lena asked. If I stand by my testimony? Roman's expression went cold. Then you become a liability I can't afford to leave breathing, he said simply. Federal protection only works if you make it to trial. A lot can happen between now and then. The threat was delivered without emotion, without malice, just cold, simple fact. Lena felt something inside her snap. Then kill me, she said, her voice rising, right now, because I'm not recanting, I'm not saving you, I'm not protecting you anymore. She stepped closer, her fear burning away into something hotter. You want to know why I really came here? Not because I owe you a conversation, because I wanted to look you in the eye and tell you that I'm done being your weapon. Roman didn't move. You think this is about being brave? Lena continued, her voice shaking with rage. It's not. It's about being tired. Tired of blood. Tired of secrets. Tired of being the person you turned me into. She laughed, a bitter, broken sound. You were right about one thing. I'm not a hero. I'm not even a good person, but I'm also not going to keep being yours. The silence that followed felt like falling. Roman studied her face for a long moment. Then he pulled out his phone and made a call. She's here, he said quietly. Yes, both of them. He hung up. Lena's stomach dropped. Who was that? Insurance, Roman said. The door behind her opened. Lena spun around. Marcus Webb walked in, followed by two men Lena recognized as Roman's security. Her mind went blank with confusion. What? Webb smiled, cold and sharp. Surprise, he said. Lena looked between Webb and Roman, her thoughts racing. You're working together, she said slowly. Have been for 3 years, Webb confirmed. Ever since Roman realized having a federal prosecutor on payroll was better than fighting one. The room tilted sideways. But you arrested his people. You said, I said what I needed to say to get you talking, Webb interrupted, and you said everything I needed to hear. Roman walked to the window. Every name you gave Webb is someone who was planning to testify against me, he said. People I suspected but couldn't prove. People who were talking to real federal investigators. He looked back at her. You just gave me a complete list of everyone inside my organization who was actually betraying me. Lena couldn't breathe. Sarah Mitchell wasn't feeding information to Webb, she whispered. She was feeding it to someone else. Someone real. Agent Catherine Morris, Roman said. A real federal agent building a real case. Sarah had been working with her for 8 months. I suspected it, but couldn't confirm it, he gestured to Webb, until you confirmed it for me. And now Morris's entire case is compromised, Webb added, because every witness you identified is either dead or disappeared. Every piece of evidence you described is already destroyed. Lena's legs gave out. She sank to the floor, her mind shattering. Everything had been a lie. The testimony, the protection, the hope of escape. All of it designed to make her reveal the real threats to Roman's organization. She'd thought she was betraying him, but she'd actually been working for him the entire time. You played me, she whispered. I positioned you, Roman corrected, just like I've been doing since the moment that pen hit the floor. He crouched down in front of her. You were always the perfect weapon, Lena. Smart enough to find information, desperate enough to trust anyone offering protection, guilty enough to believe you deserved punishment. His eyes were steady on hers. All I had to do was give you a target and watch you destroy it. Lena's vision blurred with tears. Why? She asked, her voice breaking. Why not just tell me? Why make me think I was betraying you? Because real emotion sells the lie, Roman said. If I'd told you to pretend to betray me, Webb wouldn't have believed it. Morris wouldn't have believed it. But genuine fear, genuine guilt, that's impossible to fake. He stood up. You did exactly what I needed you to do, he said. And now Morris's case is dead. Her witnesses are gone. Her evidence is destroyed. The real federal investigation ends before it ever reaches a courtroom. Webb walked over and looked down at Lena with something close to pity. For what it's worth, he said, you played the part perfectly. Then he left, taking Roman's security with him. The door clicked shut. Lena stayed on the floor, her whole body shaking. Roman poured another drink and stood at the window, looking out at the city. "You can go," he said without turning around. "Back to the safe house. Back to your old apartment. Wherever you want. You're not in danger anymore." Lena looked up at him through tears. "Because I'm not a threat," she said hollowly. "Because I already destroyed everyone who was." "Yes." She pushed herself to her feet slowly. "And if I tell someone? If I expose what you did?" Roman finally looked at her. "Who would you tell?" he asked. "Webb's corrupt. Morris's case is dead. Every other federal agent who might care is either paid off or too far away to matter." He took a sip of whiskey. "You're alone, Lena, just like you've always been." The words cut deeper than any knife because they were true. Lena walked to the door on legs that barely held her weight. "One more thing," Roman said. She stopped, not turning around. "Your testimony today, the 6 hours you spent with Webb, all of it was recorded. Video, audio, everything." Roman's voice was calm, measured. "And now I own those recordings. Which means if you ever try to come after me again, I'll release them. Show the world how you helped destroy an organization from the inside. How you got people killed with whispered names." Lena's hands clenched against the doorframe. "You'll look like the criminal you actually are," Roman continued. "And no jury in the world will believe anything you say after that." Lena opened the door. "I really do hate you," she said, her voice hollow. "I know," Roman replied, "but you also need me, because I'm the only person who understands what you've become." Lena walked out, down the elevator, through the lobby, out into the rain. She walked for hours, her mind numb, her body moving on autopilot. Dawn was breaking when she finally stopped. She stood on a bridge overlooking the river, watching the water move below her, dark and cold and infinite. It would be easy to jump, easy to end the cycle of manipulation and blood and lies that her life had become, easy to stop being the weapon Roman Vescari had turned her into. But Lena didn't jump, because somewhere beneath the exhaustion and despair and self-hatred, something else was burning. Not hope, not redemption. Something darker, something that tasted like vengeance. Roman thought he'd won, thought he'd broken her completely, thought she'd crawl back into invisibility and disappear forever. But he'd made one mistake. He'd shown her exactly how powerful she could be. How much damage one invisible woman could do when she knew where all the bodies were buried. Lena pulled out her phone, the emergency one Morrison had given her. She dialed a number she'd memorized but never called. It rang 3 times before someone answered. "Agent Morris," a woman's voice said, sharp and alert despite the early hour. Lena took a breath. "My name is Lena Mercer," she said, her voice steady for the first time in hours. "And I have information about Roman Vescari that could destroy everything he's built." Silence on the other end. Then, "I'm listening." And Lena started talking again. But this time she wasn't playing Roman's game, she was playing her own. Agent Catherine Morris listened without interrupting for 43 minutes. Lena sat in a diner booth across from her, her voice hoarse from talking, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had gone cold an hour ago. The morning sun streamed through the windows, illuminating dust particles that danced in the air like tiny witnesses to everything she was confessing. "Webb's on Vescari's payroll," Lena said, her exhaustion making every word feel like lifting stones. "Has been for 3 years. Everything I told him yesterday, every name, every detail, was designed to expose your real witnesses so Roman could eliminate them before they testified." Morris's face remained expressionless, but her pen moved steadily across her notepad. "And you have proof of this?" Morris asked. "I have recordings," Lena said. "Roman kept everything, every conversation, every transaction. He's paranoid about people betraying him, so he documents everything." She pulled out a flash drive from her pocket. "This has 6 months of security footage from his private office, including meetings with Webb, including discussions about your investigation." Morris took the drive carefully, like it might explode. "Where did you get this?" "I stole it," Lena said simply. 3 weeks ago, when I still thought I was working for Roman instead of against him. I kept it as insurance in case he decided I knew too much. And now you're giving it to me." "Yes." Morris studied her face for a long moment. "Why?" Lena's throat tightened. Because Sarah Mitchell is dead, she said quietly. Because Marcus Chen and Jennifer Reyes and David Park are dead. Because I helped kill them by believing I was doing the right thing. She met Morris's eyes. And because Roman Vescari thinks he's won, thinks he's broken me completely, thinks I'll crawl back into invisibility and never bother him again. And you want revenge. I want justice, Lena corrected. There's a difference. Morris leaned back in the booth. Justice is complicated, she said, especially when the person seeking it is just as guilty as the person they're accusing. I know what I am, Lena said. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm not asking for immunity. I'm just asking you to use what I'm giving you to stop him. Morris tapped her pen against her notepad. If this footage is authentic, she said slowly, it could bring down not just Vescari, but half the federal prosecutors in this district, including people I work with, people I trust. Then maybe you shouldn't trust them, Lena said. Maybe, Morris agreed. But it also means I can't process this through normal channels. The moment I try, Webb, or someone else on Vescari's payroll, will bury it. So what do? Morris's expression hardened. I go over their heads, she said. Straight to Washington, to people who don't have local connections, people who can't be bought. She pocketed the flash drive. But it'll take time, weeks, maybe months. And during that time, Vescari will know something's wrong. He'll start covering his tracks. Let him try, Lena said. Everything he does now just creates more evidence. Morris studied her carefully. You understand what this means for you, right? Once this goes public, you're not just a witness. You're a target. Vescari will come for you with everything he has. He already did, Lena said. I'm still here. For now. The words hung between them like a death sentence. Lena stood up slowly. Do what you need to do with that footage, she said. I've told you everything I know, everything I've done. If that's enough to stop him, good. If it's not, she stopped herself. If it's not, Morris prompted. Lena looked out the window at the city waking up, people heading to work, living normal lives, completely unaware of the war happening in shadows they couldn't see. Then at least I tried, she said quietly. She walked out of the diner without looking back. 3 weeks passed. Lena spent them waiting. She moved constantly, never staying in the same place for more than 2 nights. Hotels, motels. Once, a hostel where she shared a room with 3 other women who never asked her name. She paid cash for everything, avoided cameras, kept her head down. Being invisible again felt like wearing old clothes that didn't fit anymore. She monitored the news obsessively, waiting for something, arrests, raids, any sign that Morris had moved forward with the evidence she'd provided. But nothing happened. The city kept moving. Blackthorn Holdings kept operating. Roman Vescari kept controlling his empire like nothing had changed. Lena started to wonder if Morris had buried the footage. If Webb had gotten to her. If the corruption ran deeper than one prosecutor and reached all the way to Washington. She started to wonder if she'd sacrificed everything for nothing. On the 21st day, her burner phone rang. Unknown number. Lena almost didn't answer, but something made her press accept. Hello? It's Morris. The agent's voice was tight, urgent. We're moving tonight. Federal raids on 6 locations simultaneously, including Blackthorn Holdings. Vescari and 14 others will be arrested on RICO charges. Lena's breath caught. It's really happening? It's happening, Morris confirmed, but there's a problem. What problem? Webb knows, Morris said. Someone leaked the operation. He called Vescari 20 minutes ago. By now, half the evidence we were planning to seize is probably already destroyed. Lena's hands clenched around the phone. Can you still make arrests? Yes, Morris said. But without physical evidence, everything depends on testimony. Yours, mine, anyone willing to speak on a record. She paused. The question is whether you're still willing. When? Lena asked. Tonight, 9 p.m., Federal Courthouse. You show up, you testify before a grand jury, and we move forward with indictments. And if I don't show up? Then Vescari walks, Morris said simply. And everything you've done, everything Sarah Mitchell died for, amounts to nothing. The line went dead. Lena sat on the edge of the cheap motel bed, staring at the phone in her hands. She could run, right now, Disappear into the country where Roman would never find her. Change her name, start over. Pretend none of this ever happened. But she'd spent 3 years running from the person she really was. And she was tired of running. Lena stood up and started getting dressed. The federal courthouse loomed against the evening sky like a monument to the illusion of justice. Lena walked up the steps slowly, her heart pounding, her hands sweating despite the cool air. Armed federal agents flanked the entrance, their eyes scanning everyone who approached. One of them stopped her. Name? Lena Mercer. He checked a list, then nodded. Agent Morris is waiting for you inside, 3rd floor, room 307. Lena walked through metal detectors, down marble hallways that echoed with her footsteps, into an elevator that carried her up 3 floors. The doors opened, and Roman Viscari stood in the hallway. Lena froze. He looked exactly the same as always, perfectly tailored suit, controlled expression, eyes that missed nothing. But there was something different in the way he stood, something harder. You came, he said quietly. Lena's throat closed. How are you here? Morris said, that I was being arrested? Roman's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. I was. 2 hours ago, federal agents raided my office, froze my accounts, seized my files. He tilted his head. And then my lawyers arrived, and suddenly the evidence wasn't as solid as they thought. And suddenly the warrants had technical issues, and suddenly I was released pending further investigation. Lena's stomach dropped. You bought your way out. I exercised my rights, Roman corrected. There's a difference. No, there isn't. Roman studied her face. You really thought this would work, didn't you? He said. You thought giving Morris that footage would somehow bring me down, that justice would prevail, that the system actually works. It has to work, Lena said, her voice shaking. Otherwise, what's the point of any of this? There is no point, Roman said. That's what you never understood. The system isn't designed for justice. It's designed to protect people like me, people with money, power, connections. He stepped closer. You were never going to win, Lena. You were just going to destroy yourself trying. Then why are you here? Lena asked. If you've already won, why bother showing up? Roman's expression shifted slightly. Because I wanted to give you a chance, he said. One last chance to walk away before this ends badly for you. It already ended badly, Lena said. The moment that pen hit the floor. No, Roman said. It ends badly when you walk into that room and testify against me. Because the moment you do, you become an enemy I can't afford to leave alive. The threat was delivered without malice. Just cold, simple fact. Lena looked past him toward the door marked 307. I'm tired of being afraid, she said quietly. Fear keeps you alive. Maybe, Lena said, but it's not living. She walked past him toward the door. Roman's hand shot out and grabbed her arm, not rough, but firm enough to stop her. You don't have to do this, he said, and for the first time since she'd known him, his voice carried something close to genuine concern. You can still walk away, disappear. I'll even help you. New identity, new city, enough money to start over somewhere safe. Lena looked down at his hand on her arm. Why would you do that? She asked. Because despite everything, Roman stopped himself. Because you're the only person who ever really understood what it takes to survive in this world. And I respect that. Lena met his eyes. Then respect this, she said quietly. I'm done surviving at the cost of everything that makes life worth living. She pulled her arm free and walked to the door. Roman didn't follow. Lena, he said. She stopped with her hand on the door handle. This won't end the way you think it will, Roman said. Even if you testify, even if they indict me, even if this goes to trial. I have contingencies. I have leverage. I know, Lena interrupted. You always do. She looked back at him one last time. But maybe that's not enough anymore. She opened the door and walked inside. Roman stood alone in the hallway for a long moment. Then he turned and walked away, his footsteps echoing against marble floors until they faded into silence. The grand jury testimony took 4 hours. Lena told them everything. Again. But this time, she didn't leave anything out. She described her own crimes in the same detail she described Roman's. She didn't try to excuse herself or minimize her involvement. She just laid out the truth, ugly, complicated, damning, and let them decide what to do with it. When she finished, the jury foreman looked at her with something close to pity. "Miss Mercer," he said, "you understand that by admitting your participation in these crimes, you're essentially guaranteeing your own prosecution?" "Yes," Lena said. "And you're still willing to testify?" "Yes." The foreman glanced at his colleagues. "Thank you for your honesty," he said. "We'll deliberate and deliver our decision to the court." Agent Morris walked Lena out of the courthouse an hour later. "That was brave," Morris said as they descended the steps. "It was necessary," Lena corrected. "There's a difference." They reached the bottom of the steps. A car waited at the curb. Federal protection, probably. "What happens now?" Lena asked. "Now we wait for the grand jury's decision," Morris said. "If they indict, we move forward with arrests. If they don't—" She stopped herself. "If they don't, Roman walks free," Lena finished. "And I just confessed to multiple felonies for nothing." Morris didn't deny it. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the city move around them. Cars, people, life, continuing like the world hadn't just tilted sideways again. "For what it's worth," Morris said, "I think you did the right thing." "The right thing," Lena repeated quietly. "I'm not sure I know what that means anymore." "It means you chose truth over survival," Morris said. "Not many people have the courage to do that." Lena wanted to believe her, but standing there on the courthouse steps, exhausted and empty and uncertain whether anything she'd done actually mattered, courage felt like just another word for self-destruction. A black car pulled up behind the federal vehicle. Lena recognized it immediately. The door opened and one of Roman's men stepped out, the same one who'd driven her to the safe house weeks ago. "Boss wants to see you," he said. Morris's hand moved toward her gun. "She's under federal protection." "She's free to leave whenever she wants," the man interrupted. "No one's forcing her." He looked at Lena. "But he says it's important. Says it's the last conversation you'll ever have. Your choice whether you want to hear what he has to say." Lena looked at Morris. "Don't," Morris said. "Whatever he wants, it's not worth the risk." "Everything's a risk," Lena said. She walked toward the black car. "Lena?" "I'll be fine," Lena said, though she wasn't sure she believed it. She got into the car. The door closed behind her, and they drove into the night. They didn't go to Blackthorn Holdings. They went to the waterfront, an abandoned warehouse district where the city ended and the river began. The kind of place where people disappeared and no one asked questions. Lena's heart hammered as the car stopped. The driver opened her door. "Inside!" Lena stepped out onto cracked concrete. The warehouse loomed above her, dark and empty, its windows shattered and its walls covered in graffiti that spelled out warnings no one heeded. She walked inside. Roman stood in the center of the vast empty space, backlit by moonlight streaming through holes in the roof. He looked smaller here somehow, less controlled, almost human. "I didn't think you'd come," he said. "I didn't think you'd risk bringing me here," Lena replied. "Morris knows where I went. If anything happens to me—" "Nothing's going to happen to you," Roman interrupted. "I told you. I wanted one last conversation." "About what?" Roman walked closer until they stood maybe 10 feet apart. "About the truth," he said. "The real truth. Not the version you told the grand jury, not the version I tell my lawyers. The truth we both know, but never say out loud." Lena's hands clenched at her sides. "What truth is that?" "That we're the same," Roman said quietly. "Both of us survivors. Both of us willing to do terrible things to stay alive. Both of us damaged by a world that taught us trust was weakness and mercy was suicide." "I'm nothing like you?" "You keep saying that," Roman said. "But we both know it's a lie. You killed people, Lena. Maybe not with your own hands, but you gave me the names and I pulled the trigger. That makes you just as responsible as I am." "I know that," Lena said, her voice breaking. "I know exactly what I am. I know I can never undo the things I've done or bring back the people who died because of me. I know I'm going to spend the rest of my life carrying that weight." She met his eyes. "But at least I'm trying to stop. At least I'm trying to be something other than the weapon you turned me into." "And you think that makes you better than me?" "No," Lena said. "It just makes me tired of being worse." Roman studied her face for a long moment. "The grand jury's going to indict me," he said finally. "I know that. My lawyers know that. The evidence you provided, the testimony you gave, it's enough to force a trial. Good. But here's what you don't understand, Roman continued. A trial can go either way. Witnesses can be discredited. Evidence can be challenged. Juries can be swayed. His eyes were steady on hers. I've beaten worse odds than this. Maybe, Lena said, but you'll have to do it without me covering your blind spots anymore. Something shifted in Roman's expression. That's what this is really about, isn't it? He said quietly. Not justice, not redemption. You just don't want to be useful to me anymore. The words hit deeper than Lena expected. Because he was right. For months, Roman had made her feel necessary, important, powerful. And some part of her, some dark, broken part, had loved it. But necessity wasn't the same as value, and power built on blood was just another kind of prison. I want to be free, Lena said simply. There's no such thing as free, Roman said. There's only different kinds of chains. Then I'd rather wear chains I chose myself, Lena said, even if they're heavier. Roman reached into his jacket. Lena tensed. But instead of a gun, he pulled out an envelope. This is everything I have on you, he said. Every recording, every piece of evidence, every crime you committed while working for me. He held it out. Take it, destroy it, walk away clean. Lena stared at the envelope but didn't move. Why would you give me this? Because despite everything, I don't want you destroyed, Roman said. You were the best weapon I ever had. The smartest, the most effective, the most... He stopped himself. You deserved better than what I turned you into. Lena's throat tightened. You're not capable of guilt, she said. So why are you doing this? Roman's expression didn't change, but something in his eyes suggested she'd hit closer to truth than he wanted to admit. Take the envelope, Lena, he said quietly, and disappear. That's my final offer. Lena looked at the envelope in his outstretched hand. Everything that could destroy her, contained in one thin packet. All she had to do was take it, burn it, walk away. But accepting it meant accepting everything that came with it. The implication that her testimony could be bought, that her guilt could be erased, that freedom was just another transaction in a world where everything had a price. No, Lena said. Roman's hand didn't waver. No? I don't want your clean slate, Lena said. I don't want to pretend the last 3 years didn't happen. I don't want to walk away like none of it mattered. She met his eyes. I want to face what I did, own it, pay for it if I have to, because that's the only way I stop being the person you turned me into. Roman lowered the envelope slowly. You're going to prison, he said. You understand that? Even if I go down, you're going down with me. That's what you're choosing. I know. And you still think that's better than taking this and walking away free? Lena thought about Sarah Mitchell, about Victor and Marcus and Jennifer and David, about every person who died because she'd whispered their names in the dark. Yes, she said quietly, because at least prison has an end, but this, she gestured between them. This never ends, not as long as I keep running from what I've become. Roman stood in silence for a long moment, the envelope hanging loose in his hand. Then he did something Lena had never seen before. He smiled, not the cold, calculated expression he usually wore, not the dangerous curve of his mouth when he was destroying someone. A real smile. Small, almost sad. You were always stronger than I thought, he said. No, Lena said. I'm just tired of being weak. Roman nodded slowly. Then he pulled a lighter from his pocket and set the envelope on fire. They stood together in the abandoned warehouse, watching 3 years of evidence burn to ash between them. What happens now? Lena asked as the last corner of paper turned to ember. Now we both face what we've done, Roman said, in courtrooms, in front of judges, in front of the whole world. He met her eyes. And we see who survives. I don't care about surviving anymore, Lena said. I just care about living. Roman studied her face for a moment longer. Then he turned and walked toward the door. Goodbye, Lena, he said without looking back. Goodbye, Roman. He left her alone in the warehouse, with the ashes still glowing at her feet. Lena stood there for a long time, listening to the sound of his car driving away, feeling the weight of 3 years finally lifting from her shoulders. She pulled out her phone and called Morris. I'm ready, she said when the agent answered. Whatever comes next, I'm ready. The trial lasted 6 months. Roman's lawyers were as good as he'd promised. They challenged every piece of evidence, discredited every witness, turned the courtroom into a battlefield where truth was just another weapon to be deployed strategically. But Lena testified. So did Morris. So did 3 other witnesses Roman hadn't known about, people Sarah Mitchell had recruited before she died. The jury deliberated for 9 days. When they returned, the verdict was split. Roman was convicted on 7 counts of racketeering, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit murder. He was acquitted on 11 others. He was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison. Lena was convicted on 3 counts of conspiracy and obstruction of justice. She was sentenced to 4 years with the possibility of parole after 2. Webb was convicted on corruption charges and sentenced to 12 years. Half a dozen other executives from Blackthorn Holdings took plea deals or fled the country. The empire Roman had built for 15 years collapsed in less than a week. Lena served her sentence in a minimum security facility 2 hours outside the city. She shared a cell with a woman named Diana who'd been convicted of embezzling from the nonprofit she'd worked for. They didn't talk much at first, but slowly, over months of shared silence, they became something close to friends. You ever regret it? Diana asked one evening as they sat in the common room. Testifying, going to prison. All of it. Lena thought about the question carefully. No, she said finally. I regret what I did before, but not what I did after. Even though you're in here? Especially because I'm in here, Lena said. Because at least here I'm paying for what I did. At least here I'm not pretending to be someone I'm not. Diana nodded slowly. That's brave, she said. It's not brave, Lena corrected. It's just necessary. Lena was released after 26 months for good behavior. She walked out of the facility on a cold morning in March, carrying a small bag containing everything she owned, a few changes of clothes, 3 books, and a letter from Morris that had arrived a week earlier. Agent Morris was waiting outside. Thought you might need a ride, she said. Lena climbed into the car. They drove in silence for a while, watching the landscape blur past. Roman got stabbed in prison last month, Morris said finally. Didn't die, but it was close. Spent 2 weeks in the hospital. Lena's hands tightened in her lap. Is he okay? As okay as someone in federal prison can be, Morris said. His lawyers are appealing the conviction. Probably won't work, but they're trying. She glanced at Lena. You ever think about him? Every day, Lena admitted. Miss him? Lena thought about the question. No, she said, but I understand him, and maybe that's worse. Morris drove her to a halfway house in a quiet neighborhood where Lena would spend the next 6 months transitioning back into society. It was small, clean, supervised, nothing special, but it was hers. What are you going to do now? Morris asked as Lena climbed out of the car. I don't know, Lena said honestly. Find a job, build something normal, try to be someone who doesn't destroy everything she touches. That's a good start. Lena closed the car door. Morris, she said. The agent looked up. Thank you, Lena said, for believing me, for fighting when it would have been easier to walk away. Morris's expression softened slightly. That's what we're supposed to do, she said. Fight for people who can't fight for themselves. She paused. Even when those people made terrible choices getting there. Lena nodded. She watched Morris drive away, then turned and walked into the halfway house. Her room was on the 2nd floor, small, simple, with a window overlooking a tree-lined street where normal people lived normal lives. Lena sat on the edge of the bed and stared at that window for a long time. For 3 years, she'd been invisible. For 2 years after that, she'd been a weapon. For the last 26 months, she'd been a prisoner. And now, finally, she was just Lena. No disguises. No lies. No pretending to be deaf or dangerous or anything other than what she actually was. A woman who'd made terrible choices and survived them. A woman who'd destroyed people and been destroyed in return. A woman who'd learned the hardest lesson anyone could learn. That redemption wasn't about erasing the past. It was about carrying it forward and refusing to let it define every step that came after. Lena stood up and walked to the window. The sun was setting over the city she'd spent years navigating in darkness. But the darkness was behind her now. And for the first time since a pen hit the floor and shattered her carefully constructed silence, Lena Mercer understood something fundamental. Her voice had never been the weakness. Silence had been. And she would never be silent again. Not for men who wanted to control her, not for a world that wanted to erase her, not for anyone. She opened the window and let the sound of the city wash over her, car horns, distant conversations, the rush of life continuing forward despite everything. And she breathed, deep, free, alive. Outside, the world kept moving. Inside, Lena Mercer finally started living.